Okay, I don't think anybody's here. Let's just start, and let's start on this screen. Makes my face big. Even take them off. I was doing a bunch of work earlier, so like this blue light messes up my eyes after a while. I just got done writing an essay. Had a pretty good day. I hope. I don't think anybody's watching, but if you are, hope you had a good day, good week since last week. I was just finalizing this script I got. So let's kick it off then. If people come, they come. If not, we'll chop up some shorts and stuff for everybody. But so hey everyone, welcome to the stream. It's me, James. Glad that you're here, that you're watching. Before we get into the meat and potatoes about the Middle East stuff, something I've been wanting to talk about for a while, actually. We're also going to talk about the progressive postmodernism and how it factors into all of it, but just want to give everybody some updates on the community and the whole project and what's been going on. So if you've been following at all lately, my big push has been on Substack and Medium, putting out some content there, articles, newsletter stuff. You already know we've been digging into some pretty serious political, cultural analysis. If you're new to that, I recommend checking it out. I'm also looking for folks who might be interested in contributing and talking with me to try to kind of put this stuff more in layman's terms for me, because sometimes I come across a little too, academic, analytical. I read a lot of stuff and I live my life in that arena kind of, so yeah, I need a translator. I need a layperson translator to help me out with some of this stuff. So if you're interested in that, let me know. It is monetized, whatever. We can talk about all that, but if you're into it, let me know. It's a launch pad for everything else that we got going on in the community. Not here to just talk about stuff, although we do that a lot. A big part of what we're doing is wading through these ideas and inviting open dialogue and providing a space for that to happen. But we also want to talk about strategy, planning, and actually building something in real life and virtual communities, but building something along the lines of what we're talking about so we can practice what we preach, Discord is up. I guess I can put that in the chat here. Put a 7-day invite link in the chat. The bot should be running to give you an auto assign room. So that. And what else? What else do we got? Yeah, the Discord, that'll be growing. I got some projects and stuff I'm working on with that, some bots and like games and fun stuff and AMA, community town hall stuff that we're going to be doing. But we need to grow the community first. So, first, just going to be advertising it, trying to get people to join and turn it into a thing. It's a thing, but we need people to make it a real thing. Just like everything else we're doing in the community. Oh, we got Sons of the Forest going on again this Friday. Anybody's into that? Anybody plays PC games? A game where we can build a little community. I set up a server. We have our nation states thing too that's going on. It's our virtual online nation state that we're democratically managing as issues come up. You can vote on them. That'll change the outcome of how the government develops and everything. It's just a pretty fun thing for us to do as a group. All right, so the big project, the big vision, the Rubros project. Metapolitics is just like the political side of that. The Rubros project's everything. It's got art, music, the real life stuff, like real estate, financial stuff, family stuff, education, everything. We got a whole map laid out, but the biggest thing, the big vision, I guess, here is that we've been talking about in the community is starting an actual in real life community, getting some land and putting a community garden there and doing sustainable agriculture. So if that's up your alley, if that's something you want to talk about, you can join our discussion group, join the Discord, see how we can make that thing happen. It includes everything from health, wellness, spirituality, meditation, mental health initiatives, healing generational trauma, big into mental health stuff, diving into sustainable agriculture, like I said, trying to conceptualize a cradle to grave education system that's rooted in a lot of the things that we talk about, the spiral dynamics, integral theory, and those. So, also creative writing, fiction, like I said, art, big core in philosophy. So, yeah, if any of that stuff resonates with you, I invite you to join. Also, if any of that resonates with you and you want to write or contribute to our Medium publication, like I said, I'm looking for not just a translator to kind of communicate some of this stuff in a more, I don't know, more relatable way to different groups. That's also part of spiral dynamics, talking to people where they're at in the developmental process. So if anybody's interested in that, contributing to the publication itself, I'd love to talk. You can join the Discord. You can hop on the Facebook group. You can follow the Substack and talk to me there. There's a lot of ways that we can talk. So we're also still working on some YouTube videos, Instagram Reels, TikTok stuff. We've done a few, but yeah, working on getting like a good schedule and consistent content going with that. So, yeah, expanding into as many arenas as we can. It's exciting. It's a lot of work, though. A lot of work. A lot more than I expected, but it's happening. Current events recap going on, stuff in the world. Obviously, the Israel-Hamas conflict that we're going to be talking about tonight. The UN recently condemned it. Secretary General called for a strong, unified condemnation of all the UN countries. So the United States obviously hasn't joined in on that yet. I doubt that they will. So, yeah, that is a thing. Kind of messenger video call. Jack Smith's legal brief on Trump that happened on the January 6th riot outlined the evidence that Trump and allies knowingly spread false claims. So, intensified the legal scrutiny Trump's facing as we're going through this election cycle. Seems like he's been doing all right, though. The supporter, his fan base, everybody's so. Just wrote an article about that, actually. Just everybody's so it's beyond like reason and logic debate now. It's just in-group loyalty. Anything goes, pretty much. Haiti crisis still ongoing. The gang violence in Haiti. A lot of displaced refugees. That's what led up to the whole eating the dogs, eating the cats thing. We accepted a lot of refugees, political refugees in Haiti, trying to escape that whole situation. There's an ongoing debate still about the IMF lifting punitive fees on countries like Ukraine that are burdened with debt. If those are removed, it's going to relieve financial pressures on countries like that, but some people don't want it because they think they need to pay their fair share, need to pay for us to defend them. And that's something that's still going on. It's kind of funny that there's a lot of crypto scams going on Truth Social right now. It's got something in my newsfeed earlier today saying to beware, like be careful, because I guess people are getting ripped off on there. Sounds about right. Elon claimed that the left thinks that everyone basically to the right of Jill Stein is a far-right extremist. Wrote an article about that too. It's up on Medium. pretty much just all of that stuff, and Overton window and how all of that stuff. Check that out. Heritage Foundation just flooded NASA with a bunch of Freedom of Information requests over its supposed woke agenda and a bunch of woke employees that work there, and they're trying to expose NASA as being some kind of woke progressive organization, which might not be too far off. Who knows? We we're going to talk about that here in a minute. The organizations and some of these big powerful groups like Google, for instance, some of the stuff that basically what always complaining about. The woke progressives are running everything, and they have this leftist agenda, and I wouldn't really call it leftist. It's still super pro-capitalist, but it is part of that progressive postmodern globalist worldview that a lot of leftists have also adopted. So I can see why there's some confusion there. Check this chat. Okay, got some people. We got some people, but no chats. All right. All right. Well, let's just get right into it then. So the Israel Hamas and now Hezbollah recently with the Lebanon. The war and what it represents in the larger cultural landscape. So if you've been paying attention to the news, you've probably seen the protests dominating the universities earlier this year, drawing a lot of attention, setting up a whole bunch of reactions from people. A lot of people think these kids are stupid and they don't know what they're talking about, and they should go over there themselves, and if they went over there they would get kidnapped, and just a lot of stuff, right? But we shouldn't look at them as isolated events. It's not like some, college kids just became aware of this because they saw it on social media and heard about it in university campuses and decided it was intolerable, so they joined into this protest on a whim. These things don't happen in isolation. They're a symptom of a much deeper cultural force, and a ton of them, even though the U.S. interference and proliferation of all this predates the postmodern takeover, we're going to look at that progressive postmodern worldview and how it factors into all this, especially for the students and some of those institutions that are always getting accused of peddling a leftist agenda. So what do we mean by progressive postmodernists? Progressive postmodernist worldview gained significant cultural power. It really originated in the 1960s with the whole hippie counterculture movement. So it's defined by those kind of values, which it's no accident that at the same time in France, in philosophy, postmodernist philosophy was coming out of there, right? Foucault and Derrida. Yeah, everybody does need to learn more history about the Middle East. It really does go back so far, like the dispersion of the Jewish folks out of that area happened from the Romans so long ago, and not even all of them left. There's been Jewish tribes that have stayed there since then. Some of them are of different minds. Not all of them are Zionist. The Zionist movement really also happened in response to the Nazis. They wanted a safe place to stay, but why? If they wanted a safe place, why there? A lot of the early Zionists were driven by this kind of romantic spiritualist stuff that they wanted to go back to their homeland. But I don't think all of those originators of that idea were nefarious. The ones who really made that into Israel was England after the war and the treaty. And if they wanted them to be safe, that's not a very safe place for them to be. They could have gone somewhere else. But, and there were talks even back then about another suitable location. A whole huge thing. So, in my opinion, the real reason why the Allies decided to do that and reason that they continue to support them so adamantly is really to disrupt the Arab League. You know, have a way to leverage things over there. Keep the Arab bloc really from uniting against the United States and its allies, but also, there's a lot of it's a resource rich area, so they want to keep some kind of deeper level of access there. It makes sense they would they would be doing this. So if you look at that, if you look at it that way, it really makes sense. We're gonna get more into it. What was I saying? The progressive postmodernism, right? That movement in the '60s. There's a lot of good things about it. Um, it's a kind of a flattening, this value pluralism, and like this attempt to include more people and look at humanity as a global phenomenon. Everyone's a human, and we all belong to the same group of humans, and we need to include everybody, respect everybody. It's a mindset that says we need to transcend nation state boundaries, and that every human being matters, and that we should be fighting against the evils of modernity that came up from the machinery of modernity: racism, inequality, environmental destruction, all that stuff. On the surface, it sounds really great, but it's not always exactly that simple. The tricky part is when for the protests, right? Well, the protests and the online fights, they are rooted in a desire to stand against oppression. They also fuel something darker that's a kind of ethnocentric hatred that sneaks in. It's an undercurrent that says we're against oppression, but anybody who's not against oppression, anybody who is not up to speed on these ideas is evil. And you don't belong. Like, you either need to get up to speed and become one of us, or you're out, which is like contradictory to the whole point of the inclusion. And so it really ended up turning itself on its own head in a way. It demonizes certain groups of people, especially traditionalists, which are like religious folk, people who are more predisposed to those things, like racist thinking, like in-group loyalty, and those kind of things. So it still results in an us versus them mentality, even though on the surface it appears to want to move away from that. It gets sucked back into it. So in some way, these movements that rally around anti-racism or anti war, anti all the stuff that's going on over there in the Middle East, it lets people slip, it kind of in a sneaky way, back into demonizing people who don't align with their world. And we see that a lot. That's why they say, like, if this worldview was working, people wouldn't be talking about how America is so polarized right now. It's funny that they say it's more polarized than it's ever been. I hear that a lot, but I don't know if that's really true, because there was a civil war and everything. I think that was like maybe more polarized, but I get why they're saying it. It's because everybody's online and everybody's talking and everybody's fighting with each other and it's mudslinging. So, yeah, whatever's the postmodernist intentions are, if it is to create more inclusion, get rid of conflict, it's not really working for whatever reason. And I think really the reason, I say whatever reason, I know exactly what the reason is. The reason that it's not working, because of that, what we just talked about, how it marginalizes people who don't agree with that idea, right? And I had a good conversation with somebody about it earlier, about Karl Popper's paradox of inclusion. Basically, the idea that Allies should have put their foot down at the end of the war and gave the Jews back their property, and then yeah, that should have definitely happened. Yeah, if they wanted to give them a place, like that, I think they were talking about. I'm not sure on this. I could be way off, but I think they were talking about something about like somewhere in Africa or like maybe even like northern Madagascar, something like that. I had to look it up, but either one of those seems like it would have been a way better solution if the whole idea was to be in a safe place. I think for a lot of the Zionist people, it was religiously motivated, but for the Allies, not so much. I mean, maybe there might have been like some kind of Christian faction going on there or something that believes there's some kind of like spiritual factor to it, but it's crazy. If safety was a concern, that is definitely not the place. But yeah, it's pretty easy when you start digging into this stuff to see that the main motivations are economic and power based. They want to have control and they want to be able to access resources. Um, okay, so yeah, we were talking about the paradox, right? The paradox. This is off script too, by the way. Paradox of tolerance. Karl Popper, right? Is it's basically this idea that you can't tolerate the intolerant. We want to build a community, right? That's completely inclusive and tolerant of all the people in the community. And we allow somebody in the community who's intolerant of somebody else, then it ruins the whole thing, right? So how do we, but then if we kick that person out, then that makes us intolerant. So it's like, how is it even possible to practice tolerance? And I think that this way of looking at it falls victim to the old modernist and a super logical view. And this is also why I say a lot that postmodernism, although a reaction and like a criticism of modernism, it's still in that what Gene Gebser would call the mental structure or the modernist era, right? Like it's still beholden to those same threads of the past, of history, modernism, that is tied to this kind of black and white, logical, no contradictions type of thinking. As opposed to what we're talking about, which is more of a process philosophy based systems thinking approach to these problems. Because if we step back and look at, for instance, what spiral dynamics talks about, is that not just individual humans, but groups, cultures, societies, that everybody goes through this process. It's kind of like evolutionary process of development. So on one side, we have these traditionalist people that are building these very rule-based, strict communities, right? And the rules and the laws they're like the glue that keeps the community together. There's a lot of communities still doing this pretty well, like the Amish community, right? So those communities thrive on those things, on people obeying the rules, following the norms, and respecting the authority from tradition. Well, the modernist view is more about the individual, and we're the most important, and because we're the most important, we can find ways to navigate these rules and bend or break these rules. And eventually, if we go too far into that, we like start dismantling a lot of these things, right? Which is to the postmodernist, that's not bad, but modernism itself is bad because it generates a lot of these systems, right, that are based on these. It's still like very rules based, but not the same as traditionalism. Modernism, it still leaves those rules there, but it finds ways to navigate them. Postmodernism really just wants to dismantle all of it and flatten everything out. But it's still kind of based in the same logical, scientific worldview, right? What we're talking about is that people have to move through these. So to be able to have a solid foundation for modernist values, we have to first get the traditionalist values. And in the postmodernist view, it's just like everybody fast forward to here. We need to just like be here now. But every person in every culture, it's like basically why um, going to Afghanistan and just implementing democracy or a constitutional republic over there couldn't work. You know, they haven't gone through whatever evolutions of consciousness that they need to go through to be able to think that way, right? Because they're not thinking on like an individualistic level how Western societies do. And you know, maybe that's whatever people want to like rake these things like this is better, this is worse, this is more evolved, this is less evolved, and that's not even really what we're talking about. We're just talking about not better or worse, but just an expansion, right? Because it's a process of like stepping back and looking at the bigger picture. Even modernism, the way it does is like it looks at those rules of the religious society or whatever, and it steps back and looks at the rules and says like, now what can I do with this, right? And then postmodernism steps back again and looks at that and says, okay, what damage are these people who are skirting the rules and like forming their own systems like based on these rules, or what damage are they doing to the environment, or what damage are they doing to, you know, global society and humanity in general. So this is another step of looking back and saying, okay, everybody has to go through these things and get the values and wisdom from all these phases of development and able to, in order to be able to move to the next. So that's pretty much kind of a rundown of like how to escape that paradox of tolerance. You know, because if we look at things more in that way, we can look at people where they're at, and instead of looking at them like, no, you're so wrong because you are going to vote for Donald Trump, or you're a follower of Elon Musk or whatever. Like, you're so stupid. I can't believe that you buy into that crap. Instead of looking people at like that, you know, which is the tendency of pretty much everybody who's not in that group, right? Why we have all these polarized groups. The next step back is kind of to see that all of those things, like, we're basically trying to invite people to keep moving, right? To keep developing, to keep stepping back and getting a bigger picture view and getting more information and think critically and evaluate these things. And instead of getting stuck. Because when we, you know, just punch people for not thinking correctly, they tend to dig their heels in and just, you know, say like, no, screw you. I don't, you know, I'm not going with whatever you say. You're wrong. You're one of the enemy. And it turns into this conflict that's impossible to resolve. So anyways, the Palestinian cause, especially the plight of the people in Gaza, has become a focal point for the progressive postmodernist worldview. Which makes sense because we're thinking more on a global level, global community, compassion for others, humanitarian causes. It's a refocus from, whereas, you know, traditionalism focuses on community and a small community, and then modernism goes back and focuses on the individual, right? Postmodernism goes back to community, but now instead of on a small level, it's on a global level. So it's funny because traditionalism and postmodernism, they have a lot of in common as far as like desire for community. You know, one of them is just looking at it on a bigger scale. But it's funny too that in the postmodernist groups, there's a lot of romanticizing of homesteading and those kind of things. You know, of let me make this a little smaller so I can see the chat. You know, of homesteading and like hippie communes and stuff that they were doing in the 60s. Even today, there's like a desire for that. So the crazy thing about it, though, is that while the compassion is genuine, the support for groups like Hamas and Hezbollah muddies the waters for a lot of people because they aren't exactly a beacon of world-centric morality themselves. And that's not to say that we can't understand or sympathize with or have compassion for their plight. And it's like what does an animal do when it's backed into a corner? It becomes dangerous and it's going to defend itself. And we can look at them that way, but they, at the end of the day, they're a militant group with tactics and motivations that are pretty hard to distinguish from other extremist organizations. Like ISIS or ISIL. And they do a lot of the same things in some cases. So while some of these protesters frame their support as a fight for justice, it becomes complicated when we start, cheering for militants, and saying that we're anti-war, but we're also, happy that one group bombed another group as a retaliation. Right? So it's complicated because creating a conflict between a moral high ground that when we claim that the reality of who we're aligning with doesn't really add up to people looking at it from outside, or from like an unbiased view or from a biased view that's just opposite from our own. But, this is why I really love the civil rights era stuff, the nonviolent solution, the Gandhi stuff. Because they basically don't give that excuse. I mean, people still tried to demonize them. Nobody talks about how Hamas and Hezbollah, all the refugees. Yeah, it's true, man. I said that even back like in the. It didn't take me long. I joined the military when I was 25. And it didn't take me long dealing with all that stuff and hearing all the conversations and just reading and trying to expand my own knowledge of all the whole situation to see that, I was like going to places and seeing stuff. It's like when you're there, it's real. I remember seeing like extreme poverty in the Philippines for the first time. Like I've seen it on TV and stuff, but being there with those people living in the little shanty towns and stuff and them trying to invite us to dinner and like pull vegetables out of their vegetable garden to feed us when they don't have food, it's like it's different. And I started thinking about it, like what if I was just hanging out at my house, totally non-radicalized person, just trying to live my life, and then a bomb goes off and my house collapses and kills my family, and I'm the only one who survived. Would I be so angry that I would, do something so extreme as some of these people have done? Like, I don't know. But like actually putting yourself in that kind of a position in your own mind, like trying to put yourself in other people's shoes, it does make it easier to understand. And it's true. It's like the more we're over there causing all that death and destruction, and it's like somewhere in the millions of people who have died from all those Middle East conflicts, like by indirect effects. So, I mean, including direct effects like direct combat, violence, but other things like destabilization of infrastructure and people starving to death or being without water, those kind of things. Somewhere like in the millions of people that have died. That's just insane to think about, really. It's like, just stop. But the reason they won't stop is because, like what we were saying earlier, it's like power and money, basically, that they don't want to risk losing out on that stuff because, it's also like military strategy stuff. And, if you give your enemies the chance to, to rise up against you, then they will. So They just trying to keep everybody crushed, basically. It's crazy. A crazy way to exist in the world. Um, and I think the progressive postmodernist stuff is against that. I'm against that. Most normal people are against that. You know, it's only the psychopaths who are running all that stuff who are for that, and not even all of them. I think some of them aren't, but they're not capable of really doing it because you know that way of thinking has infiltrated all of that stuff. I think it. I mean, we've talked about this a bunch on stream, you know, in some of the past streams about how the American industrialists, even back then, were trying to take over the government, and I mean, they did basically. They didn't really get smacked back down until Teddy Roosevelt did all the antitrust stuff, and then we had another phase of monopolization in the big tech era. So, you know, and then Citizens United, 2008 stuff where we had that massive consolidation of the banking investment companies, and yeah, it's just more power concentrated in less people's hands, really. And they're looking to protect their interests, keep themselves on top of things. So, you know, that's the whole problem, I think. But the thing that's crazy about this, though, right? About this whole Trump populist movement, the MAGAs, and the resurgence of traditionalism. The traditionalist faction has grown crazy last, let's say, probably like 10. You know, they used to be pretty much non-existent in politics. They were like a fringe little group of extremist evangelicals who were in that. But as far as wider political debate and the online community, they were pretty much non-existent. And now they're huge. You know, a lot of these like Jordan Peterson, Andrew Tate, Red Pill, Incel community, that they're all about that stuff. This traditionalist value system. They're romanticizing going back to, you know, like a 1950s kind of setup of gender roles and all that. So the thing is, though, these protests, this progressive activism, all of that stuff is inadvertently feeding into the rise of all of that reaction to it. Trumpist populism, the MAGA movement, the red pill, the incel stuff. And every time that these movements make headlines, it's like a free campaign commercial for Trump, for all those people who are opposed to this stuff. Because, and I'm not saying like the point is to stop doing it. Go back to like being a centrist or something. I think centrism fails to do this because they're focused on finding common ground, and they use the Overton window. They basically just drag everything to the right as much as possible by going so extreme. But these people feel like Trump is kind of like their cultural bodyguard. He's the one who's standing up against this perceived threat from the left. It's trying to dismantle all this traditionalism and stuff, and it's just an example of how polarization feeds off of itself, you know. So, what's the answer, really? I think the thing is, right, as frustrating as this cycle can be and this reactivity and everything, it's a necessary step in our evolution because eventually the tension will have to reach a breaking point, you know, and I don't know what that looks like. A lot of people think it looks like Civil War II. A lot of people looks like it's just like the utter defeat of either the left or the right. But Trumpism is part of that process, and moving towards a new synthetic worldview that takes the values from all of this stuff, takes the best parts of all of it, and tries to leave the divisiveness behind, but also, tries to address the pitfalls and the negatives of it. We're not there yet, and this is the kind of cultural chaos that this can arise from. I've said that a lot about postmodernism and the movement of postmodernism, is that I think that, so a good example that I like to point to is Deleuze, one of the postmodernists. He wrote, the way he described the postmodernist movement itself was, he kind of said, we have these maps, right? We have these mental maps of what we think these ideas look like when we put them on top of the world. Things like America or masculinity or whatever. Pick anything that people argue about these days. And he's saying that, we had a map, right? We have a map that was drawn by people before, and we're born into that. We get handed this map, right? And what postmodernism is really trying to do is realize that the map is not the territory itself, and that we might have got the map wrong. So they're trying to erase the lines, the borders of the map, and redraw the map. And I think what postmodernism ended up doing was they erased the lines of the map, but they didn't really redraw the lines of the map. Now that's what everybody's arguing about, how to redraw the lines. And that's why there's so much chaos and disagreement, because, the traditionalists don't want the lines to change at all. They want them to actually go back to what they were before, even capitalism and disintegrated the nuclear family with the economic pressures and, changed everything into like working in factories and all that stuff. They want to even change the map back to what it was. So everybody's arguing about that because it's left us in this kind of like chaos space. And a lot of people say that's a bad thing because it's really messy, it's uncomfortable, but it's also a possibility space where we can create something new. So that's why I'm pushing, and a lot of people, I wouldn't say a lot of people, a very few people are pushing for a new synthetic worldview. Some people call it developmentalism. Some people call it integral. This is like a reference to Gene Gebser, but this is real big from like the Ken Wilber Integral Institute and the Shambhala people. But my take on it is a little unique. I don't think any of these people are wrong about what they're saying. I think they're all talking about really valuable things, and some of them have been talking about it and dealing with it a lot longer than me. Ken Wilber, for instance, is a lot older than me and has been working in that field of, developing integral theory and spiral dynamics and all that stuff. I'm pretty sure since the 60s. But my take on it, my focus on it, and what I'm really trying to emphasize within that frame that all of us pretty much agree on is about, two things really. One, Socratic dialogue, which is a big principle that we have in discussion groups. And two, it's pretty much related. It's like the Martin Buber I thou principle, or just the concept of seeing other people as people, putting that first and foremost. I think this is the same principle that Martin Luther King Jr. used in the civil rights movement, where he says, I have this quote up here, where he says, "One day we'll win our freedom, but not only will we win freedom for ourselves, but we'll so appeal to your heart and conscience that we will win you in the process. Our victory will be a double victory." This whole idea of turning the oppressor into a friend, loving your enemy, is the same thing they talk about in Christianity. Pretty much every religion has some has some like iteration of that. It's so funny to me that pretty much every religion is like, don't be a selfish jerk, and then the super religious people in every religion they do exactly that. Like, no, we're right and you're wrong. Yeah, I think they just didn't get it. I don't know, but anyways. So where do we go from here, right? How do we move past the battle between the progressive postmodern ideals and the reactionary populism that's moving further back into traditionalism? I think it's going to take this new worldview that we're talking about, one that synthesizes the inclusiveness of the progressive postmodernist movement without committing that same cardinal sin that they do by rejecting people, with grounded common sense approaches that that populist people can relate to, because that's what they love, right? They love that like common sense, ordinary dude kind of like, what would a mechanic think? Or we need a framework that respects diversity and global citizenship without slipping into the trap of vilifying whole groups of people and turning people into enemies, especially people that are potential allies. I think the left has a huge problem with that. I wrote a essay about that. It's up on Medium. And I think it has to do with that, Part of that progressive postmodern chaos was this big shift from class consciousness to identity politics. And that's a plague in the left. Even I got accused of being racist a few times during the Black Lives Matter stuff for suggesting that a lot of these racial tension issues are linked to poverty, which is created by capitalism. And I was accused of trying to draw attention away from how terrible the issue of racism is and get sympathy for white people who aren't part of it or something like that. I don't know exactly what thinking was on it, but something along those lines. But that's not at all what I was suggesting. Anyways, without going too far into that, I just want to say, like, it's not a good look to try to demonize people who are trying to be on your side, and trying to have a conversation with you about an issue that they also want to make better. And the progressive postmodernist worldview it invites people to do that pretty easily, because it's like this value pluralism where my values, whatever they are as important as yours, and if you don't respect my values, like, why should I respect yours? And it's just like it doesn't address that. That's why I think that principle is so important, so central to my take on the integral politics, the developmentalism, and what I'm calling hollow vitalism, because that's more of the comprehensive, like, entire philosophy. Anyways, like I was saying, I think the protests and the whole movement would do really well to look at the strategies of Martin Luther King, Gandhi, and Mandela, who stood for the same values, those world-centric, global village type of values, but they did it through nonviolence and without the divisive undercurrents that we're seeing today in these movements. And they showed us that you can fight for justice without turning it into a war against your enemies. This is the kind of leadership and moral clarity that I think that we're missing from the current progressive landscape. That could be really unifying, not just for the left, but for the whole thing, right? For the whole thing, because these people, what they were so great at, what all of them seem to implicitly understand, is the humanity, the tendency to humanize their enemies, even in the face of the terrible shit that they were dealing with, and being dehumanized. they were being dehumanized by these people, and still they demanded that the solution was to see them as human, show them compassion, to invite them to free themselves from their own guilt and shame around their oppression of other humans. Anyways, the challenge now is to build a movement that combines moral integrity with a commitment to nonviolence and inclusiveness. And that's what this whole project is about. A movement that's not just reactionary, but really forward thinking. So with the Rubros project, that's what I'm aiming to do. With Metapolitic, that's what we're aiming to do. And it's about communities that really live these values and practice them with each other in our groups, our discussion groups, and soon to be on our IRL community. And really in every aspect in life, we can do this with our families, with our friends. Like, so many people have such like terrible issues with their family members, loved ones, husbands and wives. This is like a very human issue that principle can really help address. That same principle we were talking about that are in those leaders. But I really think the best explanation of it is in Martin Buber's philosophy, the I thou principle. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think that happens a lot, right? I think the peaceful protests, like, I know some people who have been organizers and been involved in protests, or even just like gone to some of these protests, and it's really crazy when you start getting into the weeds of how the strategy worked, right? Because a lot of times they're very adamant about that, like not destroying property, not doing anything illegal, not doing anything that's going to get them arrested. Um, outright anyways. Sometimes they arrest them for, like blocking traffic or those kind of things. But um, yeah, I don't think they ever really set out to be destructive. But there are strategies, tactics that the police use, and that certain, groups that are opposed to them use to try to come in there. I mean, I've seen so many videos of stuff. There's like Twitch channels that are set up dedicated to this that started even back in Occupy Wall Street that try to expose some of this stuff where police or whoever will send in a fake person, like an undercover, basically, to try to get people angry, to get them to do like property destruction or whatever, so that then they can have a reason to arrest them. And sometimes their tactics are even worse than, I don't want to say any more about that, but yeah, they definitely, it's more difficult now to organize and sustain any kind of direct action opposition, especially in protest, than it ever has been, because they've just gotten better and better at dismantling and disrupting those things, making them look bad in the media. They tried to do that. That's what I was saying. They even tried to do that back in the civil rights era. They really tried to demonize those movements and say, like, oh, they marched down the street and they left all this trash here, these like subhuman animals that don't even respect other people's property. But that, like I said, they've gotten better and better at it. So, I mean, not that I think it's bad to keep trying to do those things, but the strikes seem to be to work a lot better. But really, I think if we want to impact, other than like the option 2 that I'm talking about, is like starting some kind of alternative independent communities. Other than that, like, to really change the fundamental structure of the U.S. government and economy would take some massive direct action campaigns, like organization on a level that the United States has never seen, like 10 times the civil rights movement. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Justin, man. Thanks for coming, by the way, dude. Agent provocateur, that's a good phrase for it. Sure, I've heard that. It rings a bell now that you say it. So yeah, like I was saying, the challenge is building this movement, right, that combines the moral integrity with a commitment to nonviolence and inclusiveness. Because without that, it's like it's just gonna result in more of the same. Pushing harder against Trumpism and traditionalism and the right wing populism is just gonna make those movements push back even harder, grow even stronger. That's the whole issue. Like people, they just when we fight with them, they just dig their heels in even harder, commit to where they're at because they want to win and they don't want to be wrong. So the way out of that is pretty easy. It's this principles that these guys figured out, civil rights movement, or even before that, Gandhi. But anyways, I know I think maybe you just showed up a little while ago, Justin. But if you guys got anything to say, man, I'd like to hear from y'all. What do you think about protests, about postmodernism? Do you see it as a step forward, or just more of the same old, same old? Drop your thoughts in the chat. If any of you guys ever want to come on here too and talk, man, that's cool. Done that before a few times with folks. Like, just have a friend on and we do something. I could interview you. We could have a conversation. Anything. Got through it pretty quick. We didn't have a lot of chatters today. Everybody's busy. I didn't really advertise too much, man. Usually I had invitations, hitting people up and texting people, and I appreciate you guys being here, man. Let me go back to sank down in my chair, dude. Hold on. Let me try to find this thing. Oh yeah. I could maybe pull this up though. Let me. Free Palestine protests seem to be most uphill of protesting. Yeah, for sure, man. They're they're really facing like the it's like what we were talking about when you came in with. It's harder now to do a good protest than it's ever been. I think they've just gotten better and better at disrupting them and shutting them down. Really, the main idea of like everything we had been talking about tonight is that the kind of progressive postmodern view is like we talked about the Karl Popper paradox of inclusion, tolerance. I mean, paradox of tolerance. Like how do you tolerate intolerance? That they kind of fail at that. Like they still have this like you're with us or against us mentality, which is anti-inclusionary, and they defend it by saying like, well, we can't let these people in because they're intolerant. But I think it's like a symptom of that kind of black and white thinking from the modernist past that they're emerging from. And if we step back and look at it as a process, as a big picture, where it's like, okay, people have to kind of progress through these systems, even on an individual level, but on a societal level too. Like maybe here, let me pull this up. Pull this up. I'll just pull up the whole. So like, this is some spiral dynamics, value system stuff, and I guess we don't really need to go through all these, right? Because I think beige, purple, and red, and even part of blue, you could consider it traditionalism. But red, I think I see a lot of red in like the Andrew Tate kind of, like the incel red pill community, because here's what they're talking about, like, right. So in spiral dynamics, they're saying that every individual has to progress through these value systems to get to the next one, basically. So this is really, I think, from a childhood development perspective, which is how spiral dynamics even originated. The guy who developed it, Claire Graves, developed it as like a theory of child development. But I think this would probably be like in a young childhood age. And then the next one, blue, is like the religious communities are really defined by this. Like this is like the Amish, basically. So evangelicals and them, they probably fall into this. This is why I say like both of these are kind of in the traditionalist worldview. But then orange is kind of like the libertarian Ayn Rand, like college student. I went through that phase, like I was a Ron Paul libertarian for a little while until I really started getting into philosophy and ethics, and kind of just had too much cognitive dissonance, man. I couldn't make it make sense to myself, so I evolved. But yeah, so yeah, this is like basically most of the United States, I think, is in this kind of value system. A huge majority of politics is people who think this way. There's still, you still see kind of some of this like old stuff, but like I know a lot of the water gets so muddy, with comparing these things, because evangelicals, they probably agree with this, but they're also existing inside, like the Amish, for instance, like we were saying, the blue, whatever it was, the blue, they're real community based, so they're going to take care of each other. They set things up to where it's like impossible to fail. It's very community focused. Another like thing about these phases is that they shift from community to individual focus. So purple's community, red is individual, blue is community, orange is individual, and then into green is community again. Opinion before oh wow. I just read the thing about the Free Palestine protesters are more violent than the KKK. Yeah, that's exactly what we were talking about. It's like this othering and like turning other people into enemies who don't agree with us. It's like a huge problem, I think, on the left. I was telling Octavio before you got here that I got accused of that a few times during the Black Lives Matter stuff, where I was suggesting, in some online spaces, that a lot of that stuff is driven by poverty, and that's a capitalism problem. And there were some folks who were saying that I was being insensitive to like the racist aspect and trying to diminish that and say that racism isn't important and that kind of stuff, and I was totally not saying that. And I see this a lot, man. Like this, I can see how some people get forced out of the left, because they just get persecuted, especially if they're higher profile people. Like Russell Brand, for better or worse. with his you know, accusations of sexual misconduct and everything, um, was like super leftist, man, at first. And he did that crazy great interview with on Jeremy Paxman where it was supposed to be this like big takedown of Russell Brand, where he was like, Russell Brand, like, why are you getting into politics, man? You're kind of an idiot. You're like a former drug addict that doesn't know anything about it. You don't even believe in voting. You've said multiple times you don't believe in voting. And Russell Brand was basically telling him, like, yeah, I don't believe in voting, man, because none of the political parties give a shit about us. It's just a bunch of rich people, and they, you know, pretty much like stuff a lot of leftists say. And the thing about it though was he was like funny, and he was like kind of dancing circles around that guy, and he it totally backfired. And I thought he did really great in the interview, but left Twitter after that, just attacked him for saying, because he made some comments during the interview about, he asked him like, why do you deserve to be the editor of this political magazine if you don't even believe in voting? And I think his comment was, well, I just treated that proposal the way I would treat a proposal from a beautiful woman. And yeah, so they like, they went hard on him. And I think he even like made an apology too. I think he said like, I grew up in this kind of situation, and maybe I don't really understand how women want to be talked about as well as I could, and I could probably do a better job at that. Yeah, but it was like, no, you're just a piece of shit forever, man. There's no redemption available for you. And I imagine what I would do in like a situation like that, and I want to say like, I would just, keep saying what I say and hold my ground. But I don't know. Like, I I would. It's easy for me to say right now because I'm not really like, I'm not surviving off of doing this work. It would be nice to, but you know, I think like if my people like abandoned me and I'm just screwed, you know, kind of like have to go somewhere else. So like, not that I'm trying to justify anything he did or where he's at now, which is insane. But I can see how it happened. The same way, Octavia, you were saying with the you know the Hamas and Hezbollah. Like, it's easy, it's possible to understand their actions and not like dehumanize them, which I think is a good thing. The intolerant opinion has to be tolerated in a free speech space. It's just bad if it becomes popular. Fortunately, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that is a challenge for sure. Yeah, I've thought about that. Because like my one of my big goals, like I was telling you, Justin, is to start a IRL community. And it's like I want it to be super democratic and everything. What if that stuff infiltrates? It's like, what do you do about that? Um, but yeah, I think there's so much cultural and like educational factors that go into that I think that's really the answer. Even like some of these guys, I think that started America were onto something. There are conversations about that, especially Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. Jefferson for sure. He saw what was happening back then, and he was like, "Nah, dude, this is not good." But James Madison, he talked a lot about education and transparency, that the government needed to be as transparent as possible, and the populace needed to be as educated as possible, so informed decisions, see what was going on, understand, and help each other to understand, and have conversations with each other. That was his whole thing, and I like that a lot, even though I don't necessarily agree with everything he said. I mean, Thomas Jefferson either. Thomas Jefferson probably more than Madison, far as general agreement with their kind of view of things. But But yeah, I definitely do think that's important. Definitely think that's important. Like, you know, education is so huge. I mean, they use it right now. They use it pretty much for like nationalist, patriotic brainwashing shit. So many things that I learned in school that I was so upset later when I found out. You know, like stuff about the Native Americans, stuff about World War II. That shit blew my mind, man. I read a history book. I can't remember off the top of my head the author of it, but he was basically saying that the Americans and the Allies, they didn't like turn the tide of the war and win the war. It was really because the Nazis couldn't handle the Russians, and like millions and millions of Russians died. And then the winter came and like just screwed up the Nazis, and their logistics was screwed up. And he went into super detail about all that stuff. But he said, you know, the Russians basically were pushing them back into Germany, and the Allies were like, shit, we got to do something, or else the Russians are going to take over all of Europe. They're going to gain influence. And the Allied D-Day and all that stuff was really like to stop the spread of communism. And he even talks about how they met in Berlin. Like that's where they put up the Berlin Wall and like directly went into the Cold War. It's crazy. Like, dude, why didn't they teach me this shit in school? Like, anyways, I mean, I know why, um, but yeah, this is what I would call the postmodernist value system. You know, the green, which is there's a lot of good things about it. It's like the globalist thinking, the inclusivity. The origin is in well, this says 200 years ago, like maybe the very first people, you know, the first thinkers in philosophy and stuff. But like the big shift was in the 60s. The actual postmodernist philosophy, dude, 60s. Um, I mean, he's probably talking about, he doesn't say it exactly here, but he's probably talking about like Jeremy Bentham, those guys. But anyways, like the relativistic, like cultural values relativism, sociocentric equality, uh, self-sacrifice to be accepted by the group, welfare, love, finding meaning in life. I don't know. This isn't the way I would describe it, but you know, these are the guys who invented all this shit. So, but yeah, I see it as more of like the kind of hippie movement. You know, like environmentalism, free love, like a reevaluation of like cultural and social traditions and values and like systems. Like, do we have to do things that way? Can we do them differently in a way that you know makes more sense or is more you know open and available to more people? And there's a lot of good stuff about that, but I think it led into this yeah strive for harmony, unity, and consensus. That's the thing. It's like with the cultural relativism and value pluralism and the whole like paradox of tolerance thing, and like they just want to reject anybody who's not in that space. You know, if you're not in the green already, it's like you need to just hurry up and get to green, teleport yourself here. And it doesn't really respect that everybody has to go through all these first. um so that's really what we're talking about trying to do is like step back and look at the big picture. And for the people who are in the red, for the people who are in the blue, like realize that they have to work through that stuff. And there's a lot of good stuff they get out of it. You know, there's a lot of good values that they get out of it. And they got this in I click on like the German something. I don't know what happened. I think there's a really good breakdown here too. This guy's really good, Steve McIntosh. But here he's talking about the protests and stuff. So I like his setup of it, because he just breaks it down into 3 groups, which is a lot more palatable for some people. It's just simpler. It's easier to present that way. So he's saying, like, okay, these are the 3 worldviews, right? Most people are in modernism. And the good things about modernism are individual liberty, human rights, rule of law, economic and scientific progress, personal achievement and prosperity. That's the backbone of society. In addition to these values, modernity has also brought negatives such as environmental degradation, economic inequality, and nuclear proliferation. Modernity's negatives cause some people to reject it, but this is an important worldview that can be built on and improved. Traditional is more like what we were talking about, the red and the blue. Traditional has positives and negatives. Traditional values include loyalty, family to country, duty, and honor, sacrifice of self for the greater good. The negatives include racism, sexism, homophobia. Traditionalists have authoritarian tendencies like modernity. Traditional culture doesn't need to be eliminated. We can carry forward the best while pruning away the worst. That's really what I'm talking about, is trying to, find the values but avoid the pitfalls. And then this is the, where a lot of leftists are. Maybe even some Democrats. Definitely a lot of Democrat vote. But as with modernism, traditionalist, postmodern, progressive worldview also has positives and negatives. Environmentalism, diversity and inclusion, social justice for every level. Progressive values provide a new level of care that can help America become moral. Negatives include anti-modernism, reverse patriotism, divisive identity politics, self-righteous living, and tyrannical demands for immediate. That's a pretty good synopsis of what I was saying. I mean, there's a lot more to it, but this is, this is some of us. This is this small group of us that are kind of trying to reintegrate all of this stuff together. Newly emerging skill of cultural intelligence constitutes a transcendent developmentalist perspective because while it affirms progressive values, it also recognizes the legitimacy and necessity of modernist and traditionalist values. Like a biological ecosystem, these different parts of our cultural ecosystem are interdependent. Yeah, so we can't just get rid of them. Crazy, that's where our minds go, we want to either eradicate our enemies or just eradicate this ideology. It's not the same as and a good friend of mine wrote his doctoral dissertation on that, kind of the way that ideologies work and how there's a dominant ideology and all the competing ideologies, they're basically warring with each other, and the point is to destroy. It's idea war. I really like how he says this, though. This is a really great little short and sweet kind of presentation on this whole concept. The aha moment is when we see how they're all needed, not only by the larger society, by each of us personally. And that's something that I've been thinking of, that, traditionalism itself, right? We emerged, most of us, I don't know about baby boomer generation. I think they were probably even deeper into it than we were, because they saw the beginnings of the counterculture stuff and everything, barely. But, we were born pretty much into this modernist worldview. And a lot of us didn't get those traditionalist values ingrained into us the way that some people who grew up in more traditional societies and families and stuff did. And it's rough, man. It's rough for us not having those things, because a lot of us want to re-embrace and recreate community, but then we kind of struggle to do so because we're not familiar with you know, the traditionalist values, like the things that hold community together in the first place. You know, we're a bunch of rugged individuals or whatever. So it's like we butt heads when it comes to that. Um, you know, because I grew up in that whole world of everybody telling me like you can do anything you put your mind to, and all you gotta do is work hard and blah blah blah, and you'll be successful. You know, the whole narrative that my parents, well, I mean mainly my father, but you know the whole narrative that they believed in because it worked for their parents was do good in school, go to college, go to a good college, get a scholarship. That's why you got to do good in school. Pick a good degree and go to college, get a degree so you can make a lot of money and a good job. Then you can buy a house and start a family, and thing will be great. That's the American dream. Um, but it didn't. It didn't end up being that way. Everything changed pretty quick. What's up, Lou Hicks? Yeah, man. Lou, I don't know why your chat's showing up on the chat. Whatever. I'll just look at this. You're good. Um, but yeah, dude, I lost my train of thought. Anyways, um, yeah, the progressive postmodernist stuff, it kind of got me. Like I moved into that stuff. You know, I started going to school and learning about philosophy and ethics and everything. Started looking at the world and traveling the world and seeing some of the terrible shit that was going on. And I couldn't really make my Ron Paul libertarian worldview, work with some of my humanitarian, you know, sentiments. So I shifted into that, but I think this integral view has been around for a little while, and more people are catching on. And kind of what we've been talking about all night tonight was that divided by neoliberalism, checks out on capitalism, getting styled by destruction, for sure, dude. Yeah, man. We had I don't know. We've talked about that a lot on this stream, but just the idea that a lot of people think that the disintegration of the nuclear family was caused by loss of religious values and whatever. Um, and that might be part of it, whatever. But I'm not saying that's totally wrong. But there's more to the story. You have to look at everything, and like we've talked about one of the things, one of my favorite philosophers is Gene Gebser, and he kind of goes through this whole process. I think Noah Yuval Harari talks about it in the *Sapiens* book too, like this kind of broad strokes of human history and how like moving into agrarian society moved people out of these small hunter-gatherer communities. So communities started to break down even at that point. It was always more of economic pressures because not only did they move from like 4 or 5 hour work days to working from sun up to sundown every day on farms, and population explosion and sanitation problems, this whole new set of problems. But the family structure, the community structure changed. It wasn't really noticeable because people were probably still in like small communities, and everybody kind of helps take care of each other. But the family size grew, and it started to focus more on family than it did on community. And then over time that just continued to shift until the industrial age. In the industrial age, then the father gets taken out of the home to go work in a factory, and the whole like classical, the thing that most of these people romanticize is this, like they call the nuclear family, where it's like the father becomes the primary breadwinner of the household, and the mother is takes care of the house and the kid. And that worked fine for a little while, but even some of the leftist stuff, right, the the labor union stuff and the like wanting more control and autonomy over your work schedule and choice of job or whatever. Um, I think like this whole dance, this whole like ongoing development dance that it's like they just play off of each other. But the post Fordist capitalism, it like postmodernist capitalism, the information age and all that, and like working from home or just the way things are now. Like eventually, and I think it really started in the 80s. Like the economic demand stuff and the inflation, just the way the economy works. Just in the like and the women going to work, which a lot of people blame, like, oh, it would have never happened if the women didn't go to work. Well, I mean, they had to, because like they weren't like this happened in my family. My parents, they had relationship stress about not making enough money to pay for all the stuff they needed for all the kids, and my dad was working two jobs and never saw his kids. So, my mom was like complaining about how are we going to pay for back to school supplies, and she ended up going back to work. And it's just I don't think that was an isolated incident. That was something that was happening across the United States because of economic pressure. So like the real killer of the family was the economic pressures, religious pressures. The real killer of the religious community was economic pressure. So yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff to be explored there too. I don't know what's up with this chat. Facebook chat just kind of. I can see it on the stream itself. See it on. Anyways, yeah, man. I don't know. I guess we can wrap it up, man. Unless you guys got more stuff you want to talk about, I'm gonna have to chop up some of the earlier stuff. Just me and Octavio hanging for a little while. Maybe I can get some short clips and stuff out. If I'm not bumbling too much. I have such a hard time getting shorts, man. It's crazy. I'm probably too self-critical, dude. I always think I sound like I don't know what, or I'm talking too slow or something. I don't know. Recovering from Thatcherism and Reaganism has been an uphill 40-year battle. Yeah, sure, dude. I love those memes about like the real villain of the 80s and the. My daughter sent me one actually the other day that was maybe I can find ones. It's so crazy they came out with a movie. Here it is. Yeah, this one. My daughter sent me this the other day, man. Oh, nice, dude. Yeah, yeah. I've been following Jason on Substack, dude. Yeah, I know, dude. The Reagan movie. Like, I wonder how much money they lost on that, and they're probably gonna blame it on like the woke people for. I already heard a bunch of stuff about that. Like nobody wanted to produce it because Hollywood is woke or whatever. Say, oh yeah. Substack. That's what I was doing. I can put that in the chat too, man. I gotta get this bot to like do its job and be posting this stuff. Let me see if it works, cause it's a crazy. I get needed all. That's the Substack link. But yeah, I've been reading Jason's stuff and a bunch of there's a lot of good stuff on Substack. I think Substack is pros and cons like everything. I think Substack is like the Netflix of journalism, basically. Wait, I've been pumping a bunch of stuff out on here too. One's a better link. But yeah, man, they like it's crazy that since Reagan, man, they like the Democrats have not really done shit to roll back any of that stuff. The like Bill Clinton was pretty much the worst Republican president since Reagan, and he was a Democrat. You know, with all this shit he did with the deregulation of the banks and the housing and everything, it's a recipe for disaster, man. Yeah, economically, dude, they're we were talking about that too. I think it was in the group earlier today about how like ideally there would be kind of four major political parties. I really love Political Compass, dude. Like, I got so much to say. I don't want to get into a whole debate about like political quizzes and all that stuff because, you know, I think they are they can be useful tools, but like they're also usually the way people use them is like to weaponize them to like put other people in groups and say like you're not one of me and do the othering thing we were talking about. But yeah, look at this shit. I should make just like a whole chart of all of these because I use this so much. So this is 2004, right? And this is how they ranked all of these people. George Bush and John Kerry, they're both in authoritarian right. And then 2008, Barack Obama, Joe Biden were down here. And John McCain, Sarah Palin here. Still all in authoritarian right. These are like pretty close to the middle compared to any of the rest of them that we're going to look at. But these like this was this whole like first election, right, where he did the hope and change stuff, and like there was they base all this stuff off of their public statements and campaign speeches and everything. And I think like a lot of times that's what they do too. I think like in reality they might even be, you know, they try to look at that too, like their voting records and like what they actually do. But it's hard to say with the Democrats because a lot of times they'll say shit and they don't actually do it. You know. So, anyways, that being said, dude, 2012, all authoritarian right. The major parties is all we're really looking at. The major parties. 2016, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump. This is the infamous sabotage of Bernie Sanders campaign too that year. 2020, Trump and Biden. Dude, it's crazy. Biden was down here, remember? And now he's here. And then this season. Look how like far these guys are up here. It's crazy, man. But anyways, they're all in this quadrant. You know, and this is like a they add instead of just left right, they're reducing left and right to just economic. That's why you know, some people have a problem with this quiz, this methodology, because none of this stuff, man, it's all like all these things are just conceptual frameworks, you know? Ooh, wait, 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 what are you saying? I gotta move this because I Substack is chaos magic. Yeah, yeah. Let anyone buy a house even if they can't afford it. Yeah, that's what Bill Clinton did. Tool of limited utility. Jill Stein transcendent. Yeah, that's yeah, it's true. Yeah, I like I think this one doesn't really show it, but yeah, yeah, Jill Stein, whatever. Um, this is probably a good representation of the Green Party itself, but yeah, Jill Stein is something else, man. They had Ralph Nader before. Um, yeah, just the whole thing should be Jill Stein. This I love Political Compass too because there's so many like just funny memes about it. It's like I was collecting them. I haven't like categorized everything the way I want to yet, but find some of the Political Compass. Those and trolley memes, dude. I'm addicted to those. Okay, here's one. Trying to this one's like not a meme. This is more just trying to explain different political ideologies, like systems of government or whatever. I don't think I have that many. It's full. Oh yeah, this one's kind of fun. What music do they listen to? Vaporwave. Oh, this shit's pretty funny. They have some like really funny memes though. There's like a whole Reddit, like a whole subreddit dedicated to it. I need to get all these here, dude. Oh yeah, this one's pretty cool. This is like all the countries. They rated all the countries' governments. Anyways, yeah, I was saying that they only look at left and right spectrum as being economic, which is fine. Like, you know, I read a lot of political theory shit, and I fucking love it. It is. It's kind of yeah. I love trolley memes, dude. They're so funny. Um, but if you look at it in strictly left right terms, I also think this kind of falls victim to like modernist thinking. But whatever. Like left wing economics is basically complete public control of the economy. You know, that doesn't necessarily mean the government controls it, which is where a lot of these like people who are unable to think past their their conditioning, their brainwashing, propagandization, and they think everything is like left wing is USSR Stalinist Russia. Um, you know, that's like up here, right? That's like the authoritarian left. But down here is like more of you know, left anarchists or like loose confederations of small communities. Um, but with public control of the economy. So in a small commune that could look like, you know, 20 people living on a, you know, like a little farm, and like they have a bunch of farming tools that they use to grow the vegetables, sell them to people, but they share all the tools. and they just put them back where they got them from when they finish using them. And if a tool breaks, they'll use the money to buy another one, and they share all the money equally. To maybe they don't even use money personally for themselves. Maybe they just only use it for the community. There's different ways that they could do it, but that's not like a huge government authoritarian thing, right? And if they're advocating for something like that more on like a large scale, they say, well, we should just have a bunch of little groups like this. Anyways, that's like what's going on down here, the like left libertarian. And it's funny though, because like the way US politics works, they paint the right as like being down here a lot, where it's like right wing means libertarian, like everything's free and there is no government. But there is a such thing as state sponsored capitalism, authoritarian. Like in really extreme, it's like, if you did what these guys say and just get rid of all laws and rules and regulations and just like let companies figure it out, and they can, form their own militaries and, just fight with each other about like figure it out. Eventually, like you can end up here with like one mega corporation controlling everybody and everything. It's like that's what this is, right? And that's basically where these guys are at. So I don't know. I think it's just a good, like I was saying, all these things are good conceptual tools to kind of figure out like how these ideas relate to each other. But yeah, yeah, Borderlands. It might be where we're going, anyways. Full Mad Max. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all of this. It's like I really think Rousseau was like onto something with the whole like arrest civic development at the level of the village thing. Not that I agree with everything Rousseau said either, but we talked a bunch on the stream about the Dunbar number and the monkey sphere and like human biology, and how it's difficult for us to think of people beyond a certain number, but beyond like a certain group of people that we can maintain emotional ties with. It's hard for us to think of them as people, and that really like makes sense with road rage and like people's online behavior, and just like you're like an NPC to me. You're just like especially online and in cars too, without the the visual feedback, and it's like so easy to dehumanize somebody that way. But what that psychologist Robin Dunbar said was that this is like a biological thing that's part of our neurology and part of the way we've developed, and most people can only maintain social bonds with about 150 people. Some people it might be more, some people it might be less, but that's like an average. So he was, I don't know. There's a lot of things to talk about it, but he's kind of saying, he talks a lot about how once you get groups bigger than that, it like shit just kind of goes to hell, it starts falling apart, and there's just too much. It's unsustainable. I feel like, yeah, capitalism could work on a small group level like that, and not get super corrupted. But then also, like, why would you even want? It's like if you and me and Lou and Octavio and a bunch of friends like went on a camping trip, and this is like a G.A. Cohen example. Like, would we rather organize everything like this tit for tat transactional, like, well, I'll let you use my fishing poles, dude, but I get like 10% of the fish that you catch? or like just, yeah, fucking use the fishing poles, and then like when you catch some fish, like we'll all have some fish when you get back, like if you catch anything, whatever. Like it would just ruin the whole experience of the trip if we tried to do it like capitalism. Like it kind of, his whole argument in that book was that socialism is kind of like more fundamental to humanity than a system like capitalism. people always argue that, oh, it's like it's a better way to organize society on a bigger scale. 150, I can barely do 10. Yeah. Me too, man. We've talked about that a lot before too. That it's like we're overloaded. We got so many, and it's like a lot of it's nowadays, dude. It's like work. It's like the people you work with, if you work, those are like the people you see the most, but they're not your family. It's like a lot of times it's hard to, they're so like individualized, and they grew up in that like modernist mentality. I really think, dude, I really think this is like the source of all of this bullshit, like the school shootings, the fucking mental health epidemic, all of that. It's because like everybody's isolated in like a weird way. It's like it's hard to connect with each other. It's hard to talk to each other. It's hard to be friends with each other. It's hard to, relate to each other. Like everybody's always kind of like skeptical and on guard. It's just it's just a weird time to be alive. Like, but I think we can do something about it. I think we're doing it right now. And like, one at eight, I'm in a men's group that meets every Monday, Zoom, and almost every meeting, somebody in the group says something like, "Fucking, like we're doing this, like we're doing this for ourselves, but we're moving things in the right direction. Like the whole world needs to do this." But I don't know. I think it's complicated, but it's definitely possible. I just don't think, the whole debate about who should we vote for and how should we, you know, change the go. Yeah. I forgot, dude. I forgot all about this. I meant to rock this, dude, for the stream. Got this in the mail today. Mail in my ballot. Capitalism made it impossible to discern between state role and private sector role. Yeah. Yeah, dude. Everything's so confounded, and I think they do it on purpose too. It's like really what we've dove real deep into this, man, a few times about like how did the what they call it in all the like literature and academia and the economic stuff is corporate capture. They had the corporate capture of the government, and it really kind of, I mean, it's been forever. Like Thomas Jefferson talked about it, right? He talked about the bank and the don't do this fucking Alexander Hamilton shit because it's gonna fuck everything up. So like, I think there were there were people who had a plan to try to do that shit from the beginning. Alexander Hamilton, namely, among others. But eventually, the big like boom of it was during the Industrial Revolution. The American industrialists, the fucking Rothschild, fucking Vanderbilt, Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, all those and all those big monopolies. They started doing that shit, and it wasn't until Teddy Roosevelt came in and smacked them with the antitrust stuff that that their stranglehold that they were getting around the neck of the government started to loosen a little bit. But then they kept trying to do it. Like Howard Hughes was huge in that. They started like just hiring teams of lawyers to write legislation in their favor and like save the Congress people a bunch of work. Here, I wrote this law for you. Pass it, and I'll give you fucking free steak for the rest of your life, or whatever the fuck they do. And but the big monopoly, there was another like big rapid monopolization period in the industry. I mean, in the tech age, the computer age. Starting with Microsoft, they got hit with so much antitrust stuff, and then Then the social media was another huge one. And the Apple, dude. Apple was like, with the iPhone and the Apple Store was like insane. Um, and Google, these online marketplaces and everything. It's like, it's crazy. But yeah, there's a few big tech companies and a very few big financial companies that pretty much have a monopoly. And it just keeps getting worse and worse. Like the power consolidation, it just keeps concentrating the economic power in the hands of fewer and fewer people. Um, and what they really did was like they used the government, they flipped it into like their own tool, because they argue against public welfare and like public insulation of risk, but they insulate themselves from risk with the government. And that's been their whole playbook like for forever. And I think that's why it's so confusing to people, because they, like you said, capitalism made it impossible to discern between the state and private, because those are private companies, but they get all these subsidies and all these favors from the government, and it's so convoluted. And when you start really diving into that stuff, like people oversimplify it and say like they get these subsidies, and then people are saying, well, it's not like they're getting it's not like they're getting grants. It's like they're getting tax breaks and they're getting tax credits. So, and some of them are getting grants. Like Elon got, how many grants did that motherfucker get, dude? But, just like, it's crazy, bro. How the misinformation, confusion campaigns just fuck people up so bad that they can't see, they can't see like what's actually happening. But that's why I think what we're doing is important, is like trying to keep stepping back and looking at the bigger picture, and really look at like where we can really see it and figure it out is like looking at the rest of the world for context to some extent, which is getting harder to do because the United States economy is pretty much taking over the whole world. And it pretty much has at this point, except for a few holdouts like China, probably the biggest one. Other ones that don't really matter as much, like North Korea, is like impenetrable, dude. but like nobody really gives a shit about them, except for wait, did they have nukes now? I don't remember. I know they were working on that shit for a while. I don't know, whatever. Anyways. My ADD brain is trying to go down rabbit holes. But yeah, the kind of global context, but really like the historical and the philosophical and like ideological trends of history, and how they led up to this, and where are we going from here? I think that whole conversation is really like the key to seeing and unlocking all of this stuff. But it takes a lot, it takes a lot of foundation building for some people, because not everybody is aware of a lot of that stuff. It's not because they're like stupid or whatever. It's just because, for one thing, they don't teach that shit in school. They don't want people to know that shit. So unless you're really like taking it on yourself to try to seek that stuff out, it's pretty hard to do. And then like all just other human nature stuff, like the in-group loyalty stuff and the cultural stuff, like it's like those statistics. It's like if you grew up in this part of the world, your religion is probably this. It's like this percent chance, because that's what happens to everybody. I think that like presents some challenges. How do we move people into a more open mindset or whatever? It's crazy. They have one company that owns the other companies, and we're getting like third generation shit from Walmart. Yeah, yeah. It's crazy, bro. You see those charts all the time that shows like this company, there's like three food, or whatever, it's like five food companies that own all food in America. The crazy thing too, dude, I've like been digging into that stuff a lot, like the like people saying things like BlackRock owns everything and whatever, which is like the financial side, right? There's three. They call them the big three in economics nowadays. It's BlackRock, State Street Advisors, and Vanguard. They own shares in pretty much by Cisco. Oh yeah, yeah, like Unilever and Johnson and Johnson. Yeah, but yeah, what I was saying is basically all those companies they basically own each other. And if you really like get into it, it's like who is it? Who is it? Because it's like companies aren't even, they're abstract entities. Like there's people doing this shit. And when you start looking at these people, it's about 3,000 people, the whole world, that they all own interest in each other to some extent. Of course, they're all like involved in their fucking pissing contests and like who's gonna have more control. Um, but that's pretty much how the world works. It's like those people fighting with each other, and we're like just pawns, like NPCs in the game that they're playing. Oligarchs love selling small government and capitalism in the media space. It benefits some great. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, that's the whole game, dude. They they tell us like that's how we have freedom. We don't have that. We don't have freedom anymore. Like little do a lot of people knows we don't really have freedom already. They're controlling everything. But there's an illusion of it. I kind of, dude. I remember one of the things I think about a lot with that whole thing is like I remember my ex girlfriend was like she was super into all that just like dumb reality TV stuff, like the Real Housewives of whatever. And I watched Real Housewives of New York with her, and that woman who created the Skinny Girl Margaritas. Um, I think she had like a spin-off show too about it, but she ended up like once it got so popular, turned into like a legit company making a lot of money. She started getting all these offers from these liquor companies. And they're the same thing. It's like four or five of them own everything. And I think she got bought out by Jose Cuervo. And I don't know, they didn't say what the amount was or what, but she did talk about the deal that they gave her. It was like so many hundreds of millions, I'm sure. And they kept her on as a consultant and also like pretty much let her maintain some kind of creative control over it or something. I don't know. Like the deal they gave her was pretty good. It was like basically they own her company and they get all this money from it, but they still pay her a salary and they give her like a retirement. They gave like she's set for life. Kids are set for and like that's basically what they do, man. If you come up, like they'll force you to sell by giving you an offer you can't refuse, and if you don't, then they'll just fuck with you. It's like what Facebook did to Snapchat, right? Facebook tried to buy Snapchat and they didn't want to sell, so Facebook stole their little stories idea and they just made their own version of it, and then Snapchat sued Facebook, and then they just fought about it in court. It's like that's the Microsoft playbook. Microsoft had been doing that to other software companies for forever. Dude. They just don't give a fuck. Yeah, yeah. It's funny because how much the right talks about the algorithm is owned by the right. The it's funny how much the right talks about social media companies and all that stuff being liberal biased. And I think there's some stuff, dude, like the Google stuff about like the Google search, certain things. Like there's definitely people tampering with shit in that way, like using it to fit their political agendas and stuff. But I mean, especially YouTube, dude. I think YouTube was the biggest one that was like accused of all that right wing radicalization stuff. But I think both of you, you probably heard all those conversations about like the algorithm is just playing off of like what keeps people engaged and what gets people's attention. And it turns out that like fighting is, is more, it gets people more like when people get pissed at each other and start arguing, they stay engaged longer than if they're looking at like cat pictures. So um I don't know, man. I've noticed it on my feed, like as like we were saying earlier in the stream, dude. I think Zuckerberg is probably in the progressive postmodernist worldview, but my feed, dude, I get way more engagement if I post some shit that's just like talking shit about Donald Trump being a loser or something than if I post, something that actually like has some kind of like insight or conversational value or something, just it's that simple like bullshit, especially if it's funny, man. I think a lot of people, they just want to get their like short attention span fix of some funny dumb shit and then keep scrolling. But yeah, it's crazy that it I don't know if it's like right bias or left bias, and some are probably different. Like Twitter is or X, whatever, is definitely right bias, and Elon. Dude, did you know that? Did you know that Elon Musk got pissed about Joe Biden tweeting a Super Bowl picture that got more views and more likes than his Super Bowl picture? So he made the Twitter engineers boost him on the algorithm. So his posts on Twitter get like seen first by everybody who's on there. So he's like, the free speech thing is like, what? It's like, what does they say in Animal Farm all the time, dude? It's like, everyone's born free, but some people are born more free than others, or something like that. It's like, I don't know. It's like everybody gets free speech, but some people get freer speech than others. But yeah, fucking X definitely has a right slant on purpose because he thinks he's trying to balance out the left slant of all the other ones or whatever. We are in the red and black. We are the red and black ants in a bottle. Just mind our business till someone shakes the bottle. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's fear based. Yeah, it plays on that, man. My one of my friends, one of my good friends, is like he's a tech industry genius, really. Like he's just real big into all that. He started multiple AI companies, and he's got like he gets all these like investments from these venture capitalists and stuff. Like I mean, I think right now he's doing some kind of like deal with Saudi Arabia, like for them to use it. He's crazy, man. But we've talked about that before, like the whole social dilemma. Like, could we make an AI algorithm that, boosted, like altruism or something? And I think like the biggest problem I think the biggest problem like that he talks about with it is like he was like, yeah, sure we could, but like it could be like a chat bot or something like on Twitter or just like on the internet, like a web page people could go to, but like how would you um how would you like monetize it basically? How would you get people to use it? And like how would it, because it needs like, I mean, the the data set, you know, that you train it from would be pretty easy to set up, but it also needs like some kind of incentive to keep, you know, learning from and like as it develops. Um, so he like, you know, wasn't exactly sure how we could make that work. It's an ongoing conversation, dude, and I'm hopeful about it, but you know, I think it would be cool to do even what he was talking about, like just have one that just like on Twitter, you know, and just because I was kind of telling him that I was like, dude, I could kind of imagine, you know, for like my story that I'm writing or whatever, like in the future, it's like there's a bunch of AIs that they're kind of like almost like celebrities or something. You know, they're just like really well known for their kind of like personality, and I don't know, like I think you could have different ones that were different. Um, you know, they emphasize different things and they care about different things. But yeah, I don't know. AI in general is a whole fucking another rabbit hole, dude. I really think like, you know, people were freaking out about it when that Social Dilemma documentary came out, and I was just saying like, this is not like it's not anything different really than what they've already been doing. It's just like a more efficient, like automated tool to do it with. But it's still the same kind of brainwashing and like subliminal bullshit that they've been doing with advertising all along. You know, it's all part of the same system of, you know, getting people to buy shit and marketing and like capitalism bullshit. But like the problem was that what is that meme, dude? There's that one meme that's the bro, the verify that one. I love that fucking meme, dude. Oh, I can't find it. It must have got it must have got de-algorithmed, dude. Yeah, I can't find it, dude. Anyways, I was about to say it, dude. The problem is capitalism, but that shit's pretty funny, dude. Like how people say the back to a bartering system, potatoes for foot rubs. Oh, nice, dude. Take that deal. Take that deal 9 times out of 10. Engagement bait is the future. People love correcting each other, other people. Yeah, 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 yeah. I really, I feel like, I've thought about this shit so much. What do you do with this like short attention span, like fucking crazy bullshit? You know, unless like they just succeed in their quest to turn us into like robot slaves and plug us into the Borg or whatever they're gonna end up doing. But um, I really think like the only way to overcome that is through the cultural and educational stuff. You know, like I can't really imagine any other way unless it just sorts itself out some way. I don't know. Um, you know, I've tried to think of ways to deal with that. I think it's just like cultural shift stuff. Kind of like what Lou was saying, like going back to bartering or whatever. Like that's why I want to start the little ranch. You know, like if we're doing that kind of stuff, we can live and practice these kind of values that we're preaching. Maybe we'll have a less of a tendency, even if we are still online and we're still like connecting with each other that way. We'll be like less inclined to do that. If we're teaching each other about like the Dunbar shit and the monkey sphere, don't be a fucking dick and whatever. I mean, I don't know. It seems like it always fails. Like that's been pretty much the point of every religion ever. The worse the foot, the better the potatoes. Vermont doesn't allow billboards. Yeah, dude, I would be good with that. Like, word of mouth has worked fine for a long time. Yeah, it's just so, man. What happens when they neural chip you, dude? You just get fucking advertisement stream straight to the brain at all times, or what? It's like it runs in the fucking side monitor, dude. Infiltrates your dream space. I don't know. That's like even more of a dystopian nightmare than what we, than what we have right now. Man, I'm glad you guys showed up, dude. I love it when y'all show up and we can just start bullshitting, man. This is nice. Yeah, dude, we better stop talking about this shit. He's giving them ideas. Who am I kidding, man? They already thought of this shit like fucking 30 years ago. You had to advertise it for McDonald's in a dream already? That's fucking terrible, dude. I fucking love dreams, bro. I really feel like the military destroyed my ability to have or to like remember them, man. I used to write them down. I used to write my dreams down like religiously, and I would like write like pages and pages, even if it was a dream. I remember I had one dream about like walking out onto a dock on a lake. That was all I remembered. It was just that. But I wrote like probably like 5 or 6 pages in the notebook trying to describe like the wood grain and like the lighting and the just everything. Many details as I could remember. And that's one thing too is like sometimes when I would think about like the light, like where's the light come from? Like there was no sun. What was there a sun? That became like one of the ways I think that I would like realize I was dreaming because I eventually I my dreams got so detailed. I was remembering like sounds and smells and stuff, but then you know things would be weird. Things are weird sometimes in your dream, and you're like, "Oh, that's weird," and then you're just like, "Oh, fuck it," and you keep just like keeps going. Um, that started happening, but it was so like vivid and intense that I would like sometimes I would be like, "Oh, it's a dream," and then you can do whatever you want. Have lucid dreams. Yeah, that was fucking awesome. I wish I could do that again. I feel like there's something there, something like about the mind, reality that we're tapping into that is unexplained by science and shit. That there's some value there that we're missing out on. I think it gets fucked up for a lot of us through work and all that. Yeah. Yeah. They pay you like fucking 3 cents per ad that you view when in your sleep. Yeah, bro, Lee, you've had some lucid dreams, dude. That shit is man, I love that stuff, dude. Like the Carl Jung stuff about dreams and just some of the, older philosophy stuff too. They talk about it. I just think it's really fascinating. Like lately I've been getting into some fucking weird esoterica, like antiquities. Super mind blowing. It's not really along the lines of any of the like political philosophy stuff that we've been talking about, but I mean it could be, I guess, if it ties into that whole like evolution of thought and culture conversation. But like, just people were doing some fucking bizarre shit, dude, in antiquity that would like if you went back in time and saw like what these people is like anybody back like by today these people would be fucking fully insane by our standards, like mental institution insane. Richard Ludicro's Waking Life had good tricks. Is that let me look at it, man. Probably spelled that wrong. Link later. Oh, 2001 film. Oh yeah, this sounds like right up my alley, dude. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I gotta check this out, dude. Thanks for telling me about that. Yeah, I've read some of these tactics. Like, I kind of just like independently discovered mine. I would do this method, dude. When I would fall asleep, I would think like it was like three or four things because I changed it at some point. And I was a teenager too. When I was like, this was from when I was like 16 all the way till probably till I was like 18 or 19 or something. But I would, when I was falling asleep, I would, I would tell myself, I'm gonna remember my dream, and then I would say, I'm gonna dream about this, and then maybe the first thing, because I would always think like what time I was gonna wake up too. Be like, I'm gonna wake up at 6:30. Gonna remember my dream. I'm gonna dream about this. That didn't always, to be honest, like pretty much never worked. But then, and then the last thing I would say was, "Am I dreaming?" And I would just repeat that in my head over and over. And a lot of times it would work, man. Just you know, realize it and start flying around and teleporting and doing like Neo from the Matrix type shit. I have a theory that lucid dreaming is a peek behind the veil of afterlife. Yeah, bro, I could get with that. I heard peyote expand your mind. Memory is another. Yeah, I was watching a guy talk about that recently, man. I think it was on Joe Rogan, actually. It was the guy who was like talking about exposing Google and like all that stuff. Like this guy's a super maniac. He's set up like this whole monitoring system to spy on Google, like the way that Google does to everybody. and but he ended up getting like, he ended up like tail spinning into this conversation about how like your body, you as an organism are like a giant transducer, and like your organs are like a incomplete transducer for like what's happening in reality or whatever, and you're part of it too. But I don't know, it kind of reminded me, he was presenting it like he came up with some new radical theory because it was more scientific than some things that other people had said, but it reminded me of this quote, dude, by William Blake. There's a perception. If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is infinite. And it's cool because Aldous Huxley wrote this book called Doors of Perception that was based off of that quote. And let's see if it says it in here. Yeah. This is kind of it. Like what you were saying, Lou, like the afterlife or whatever. He was saying that it was a lot deeper than this. He was saying that instead of what we usually think about learning and how the mind works and how we like receive information and we process it and then we learn and we, have memories like stored somewhere in there or something, whatever. Like this computer model that we often use in like the modernist worldview. He was saying that instead he had an experience of being connected to everything and that his mind was working more of like as a filter to block things from him so that he could actually function as a organism, because if he actually experienced all that, like what William Blake was saying, he would be, like fully insane, but like unable to function. So in a way, his mind is like keeping him safe as the entity that he is, like manifested in the physical world or whatever. And a fun like trivia fact too about it is that Jim Morrison named his band The Doors after that Aldous Huxley book. But this is not a new idea. This was like something that Plato and Socrates talked about. Like they have a whole Platonic dialogue dedicated to it, the Meno. And in there he like teaches a slave boy how to do math. And he's trying to argue that it's not that he didn't know how to do this. He didn't like get new information. He just remembered, and that's the whole like Platonic epistemology, is that learning is a process of remembering, not adding of new information or. But I think I just think it's interesting because I've had similar experience like with dreams and lucid dreams and astral projection stuff and whatever. And I don't know. I don't know anything really, but I know there's something more to it, than what the current worldview and model really explains. There's something going on there more than science wants to admit, because it would, whatever it is, will like undermine their whole picture that they painted of the world as like this big machine. I think the whole thing is like alive. It's more of like what the animist people said in the beginning. But yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of protectionism going on with that stuff. That is kind of like some of the stuff. I was talking with one of my friends even before we started this stream about that stuff, like the antiquity, like Bronze Age stuff that I've been delving into. Some of like the Gnostic Christianity and like esoterica stuff. Just like even just some of this shit is just like it's crazy, dude. Like some of you guys probably already know about the Yahweh, the Jewish God that became the Christian God, uh, is based on a storm god from the Canaanite pantheon. So he's basically like a Zeus figure in a pantheon of gods that became, because they didn't. When you learn about like Greek gods, it's like, oh, they were all, everybody believed in all of them, and they were all like, part of this religion thing kind of that they believed in. And it wasn't really like that, dude. It wasn't like that at all, really. wasn't like they went to school and learned about Aphrodite and Zeus and Mercury and stuff. It was, it was like the the oracles for those gods had cults. So there were like there's like a cult of Apollo, you know, and they actually worship them as like deity. Like, you know, you don't want to piss this dude off because he'll fuck you up, you know. And like they thought they were like actual entities, and a lot of this stuff is like it's like you know, the way Carl Jung talks about it is like these archetypes of in humanity, you know, of like whatever. But like the Oracle of Delphi was the Oracle of Apollo. She was called the Pythia, and these all these oracles were like teenage girls who had been conditioned. Like they would ingest and like put these substances in their bodies. It was kind of like in Dune, like the Bene Gesserit witches. Like they would drink these, or I don't know if it was drink. In 300, they had like the vapors coming out of the ground or whatever. I'm pretty sure they were like doing some. They were somehow ingesting some kind of concoction, dude, that was like put them in a psychotropic trance state, dude. And that's how they would like deliver these messages from the spirit world. But those things that they were drinking, supposedly like a normal person couldn't drink it because they had been like, they would use like viper venoms and stuff, and they would like build up these tolerances to some of these poisons that they were drinking. It's like datura and stuff today, like, but anyways, they yeah, they were doing crazy shit, bro, and they were using like pretty much all this culture and stuff like revolved around this use of like substances and medicines, like plant and animal medicines. Psychedelics thought space have been hijacked by tech bros. Yeah, dude, they use it for I mean, like, that's what I always say when they talk about microdosings, like they're trying to boost some like creativity so they can come up with like more innovative products or uses for their tech bullshit or coding, whatever. It's like, dude, why not a macro dose, bro? You tried that? Probably. Oh, there was such a good tweet about that the other day, dude. I think Caitlin Johnstone had it, actually. It was like something she was talking about ayahuasca. If it's gonna be here. I love this woman, dude. She's so great. Uh, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's on her Substack or something. Anyways, it was like a tweet that somebody did about like their venture capitalist was like warning founders against doing these ayahuasca trips because they lost some like good founders that way. It's like they just become totally disinterested in capitalism and like the modern society. Like, no, do more. We need more of that, dude. Yeah. But really, like what I was saying about the, it was basically exactly what you're saying, Justin. The psychedelic thought space been hijacked. I think before that, it's hijacked by Roman society. Like they were participating and proliferating these like orgy practices and this use of these like psychedelic rituals and stuff. But when they co-opted Christianity and turned it into, you know, something different than what it originated as, like assimilated it into their bureaucracy and everything, it that became like this Puritan kind of movement to get rid of all that stuff, so that it could no longer like threaten Christianity, basically. And that like, you know, even so, because a lot of the stuff they were doing was like fucked up shit with kids, man. Yeah, I was telling you some shit about it. I've been really into that shit like in the last like week or so. I've been just fascinated by it. But yeah, they were doing fucked up shit with kids, dude. They were like taking kids and like with the same shit with the oracles. They were taking kids and like a lot of it came from I think the Scythian people. And this woman named Medea that like the word medicine is it comes from. Um, I don't know how much of this stuff they originated. I'm sure everybody was like fucking with stuff, but yeah, those women were like crazy, like Viking warrior women. And one of my other friends today, man, we were talking about. He was telling me that they used to cut off one of their breasts because they were like horse warrior women. They would like shoot poison arrows at people, and a lot of them they would cut off their breasts. Like that was part of their culture. So like the arrow string wouldn't get like fucked up on them. But yeah, yeah, that shit is crazy, dude. But I think yeah, it was like a way for Christianity and that whole kind of system of government, which was like mediated through Christianity to protect itself from all that pagan ritual shit that it came from that. It arose out of that. Like the original Christians were also one of the cults of the oracles. Another different oracle called Sybil, and the original Christians were called Sibylists. Like the main person who the Jesus story is based off of was a Sibylist, and his disciples, all the followers, were Sibylists. Yeah, that's why the Hebrews didn't like them. Like fucking weirdos, man. Like yeah, but I don't know. That shit's wild, dude. How that shit, it destroyed so much of that shit in the whole world. Like the Native Americans were doing stuff over here, wiped all those practices out from them too. It's like it's like kind of look at it like this space, dude, that we've kind of painted ourselves into, that we've like created for the world to unfold in, is very like desolate, and like devoid of like any kind of meaning, spiritual meaning. It is like a big machine. It's like no wonder that the scientific worldview is like this metaphor for this like machine universe, or like a big computer. It's like we're all in a simulation. Like that's the way that we think about the world, because pretty much like the logical like modernist age stripped all that other stuff away and made it like useless. It's like there's no value even in like capitalism. There's no value in like friendship and family, that kind of shit. That's why that shit is destroyed. It's like it needs it in so much as that it provides some kind of like retreat or like catharsis for us to not just off ourselves, which a lot of people are doing anyways. um but as far as like economic value, it has none. It just gets in the way. Like that's what happened to me in the military. I'm a single parent, and they were like, I know that's not like necessarily the best example of like a corporate money profit driven structure, but a lot of those people, they have the same mentality of like getting shit done and get the work done. It's all about productivity. And the minute I became a single parent, it was like I'm a fucking big problem for them. It's like very not conducive to family, dude, at all. Yeah. Even I heard so many people just complain about like women getting pregnant and stuff. It's like, oh, they shouldn't be allowed to get that much time. They're just getting pregnant on purpose so they don't have to work. It's like fucking insanity, bro. I'm definitely gonna watch this. That did remind me of this movie, though, dude. Just rambling about that shit. This movie I thought was pretty good, man. It was surprisingly a lot better than I thought it was gonna be. I thought it was gonna be just like your run of the mill kind of dystopian future fucking bullshit. Like, oh, they found some gimmicky, thing to play off of, which I mean, it kind of reads that way. You know, it's like this company created a technology to where women don't have to carry babies in the womb anymore. They just, they're like test tube babies, basically. It's like a external womb, and it's really, it's actually really funny, dude. I don't know if it's based on a book or something. If it is, I probably would look, but it's just funny how they kind of play around with some of these like inversion of like gender roles and just different shit that's kind of going on now. They push the limits of it a little bit. Like for instance, they have these radical feminists, right, who are protesting these pods, saying that they want like because it's funny, right? Because like a part of like feminism is like right to work, and like they're saying like, okay, now that men are like because this dude, the boyfriend, husband, or whatever he is, it's like these men are walking around with these kind of like baby carrier type things, but like holding the little egg thing as their stomach and like pretending like they're a woman, a pregnant woman. And there's all these like radical feminists who are pissed about this, saying that they're like intruding on like women's natural right to be mothers or whatever. I don't know. It's just some of it's really interesting. Um, but yeah, really the whole point of it is like the company doesn't give a shit about anybody's fucking civil rights or whatever. They care about is making more money. This company can, you don't even have to keep the egg with you. You can just leave it at the company. So like that's what they want you to do. They just want you to work more, you know? So yeah, it's pretty good. Anyways, man, I'm gonna fucking wrap it up, I think, dude. It's almost 9. We went pretty good. Usually I plan for like an hour and a half. Unless y'all got more shit you wanna bullshit about. Yeah, man. Yeah, it's not a bad movie, dude, if you want to check it out. I mean it wasn't like life changing or anything. It wasn't, you know, not like one of the best movies I've ever seen, but it was it was better than I thought it was gonna be. And it had like it provoked some thought. So that's really what I'm looking for. If it's just like super predictable and I'm like, oh, this is whatever, dude, like no, nothing I never thought of or seen before, I feel like I wasted time, but I didn't feel like that with this. Could have been a grandpa. Oh, grand uncle. Oh yeah, thanks for hanging, dude, this whole time, man, Octavio. Appreciate you, dude. Justin, man, good to see you, dude. Thanks for showing up. Lou, have a good night, man. I think there's some other people lurking, dude. I appreciate you guys too for being here. See if I had anything else. Are you taking care of him? Yeah, I will, man. Thanks again for coming, dude. Yeah, I guess all I really just want to say to wrap it up, dude, is you know, it's way better when I hear from you guys. Like, I don't mind sitting on here monologuing. I can ramble on and ramble on, but if anybody wants to come on and have a conversation, or you want to interview me, or you want me to interview you, that's always really fun to do. I would like to know what you guys think about everything we talked about tonight. I know we went off the rails a little bit. You know, what about the protests? What about the postmodernism stuff? Put the Discord link in there. The Facebook group is up. The discussion group is a good place. That's probably the busiest place. If you guys want to talk or play around with the nation states game. You guys play video games, dude. We can get on some games. I'm trying to get a community going on the Sons of the Forest on my server there. And I know some people are into some other stuff, dude. Like, it might be cool to do like a sandbox games. You know, it'd be cool to like a Minecraft type stuff. I don't play Minecraft, but if anybody's into that. Thanks for sticking with me, man. It's crazy, chaotic times, dude, and these things aren't easy to talk about. But I think I think we're doing good. I think we're doing something good here, and we're gonna keep pushing forward and talking about whatever comes up next. You know, how can we build this community? How can we build this society and make it more integrated and involved and more comprehensive and honor everybody's views? Something more in line with the values that we actually care about. Take care of yourselves, man. Stay connected. Let's keep talking, and see you guys next time.